Though, huge story. Richland County Sheriff has just announced recently here he has officially fired this school resource officer and the sheriff's deputy, Ben Fields. Fields lost his job now just 2 days after this video surfaced online showing him taking down this 16-year-old girl at Spring Valley High School. Officials say Fields was called in after the girl refused orders to leave her math class. And while the sheriff criticized the student for not following orders, he explained how Fields totally broke policy in the sheriff's department.
What he should not have done is thrown the student. That's what he should not have done. He could have maybe done a lot of things that he is trained to do, but he was not trained to throw the student. When you make an arrest from someone who does not have a weapon that you need to escape from, you never let go of that subject. You maintain control of him.
The sheriff also added that many at the school supported the school resource officer, including the teacher and the school administrator, who initially ordered her to leave the class unsuccessfully. But a second student arrested for, she says, protesting her classmate's physical takedown, said that Fields has a reputation for being rough, and that is why cell phones were pulled out.
I mean, just seeing her being thrown across the classroom like that was really traumatizing. I've never seen anything like that in my life, and it just really broke my heart to watch it. We've heard about his reputation, and we've heard that he's a really, I guess I can say dangerous man to get involved with, on that level. So when he came in the classroom, I immediately told my classmates, get your phones out, get your phones out. Like, I think this is going to go downhill, and they did.
Let's discuss with me now former prosecutor and civil rights attorney Charles Coleman, and also with us Marvin Thompson. He is the CEO and president of Lighthouse Education Foundation and former principal of the now closed charter school that was featured on Blackboard Wars and on Oprah Winfrey's network down there in New Orleans. So gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. And Charles, let me just turn to you. I read your piece in The Root. You actually asked, one of the questions you ask in your piece is similar to what we heard from the sheriff, that being, he's really going to look into whether or not the school resource officer should have been called in for this disciplinary action in the first place. What do you think?
Sure, Brooke. I think that this issue raises a lot of questions about how school resource officers are being engaged in our classrooms with respect to student populations. The purpose of the school resource officer in schools in general is to ensure the safety and protection not only of students but also of faculty. And that's typically going to be engaged when you're talking about something insane like a school shooting. Exactly, or something of that nature. School resource officers are not supposed to be used as backups to teachers who can't control their classrooms. The teachers, counselors, those are the people who are adequately trained to be able to deal with disruptions in classrooms and things of that nature. But when you're talking about school safety and when you're talking about viable threats to the actual physical safety of students or of teachers, those are the instances that school resource officers should be reserved for.
Marvin, I want to ask you specifically about your school in New Orleans, because I know you had, at least one SRO that teachers and administrators could call in. Do you think that this was an appropriate time for a school resource officer to be called in over a disciplinary, issue apparently involving this young woman not putting her phone away, asked to be, leave the classroom? She wasn't compliant. What would you say to that?
Well, I think this issue really is about classroom management. Teachers are trained with a variety of strategies to address that type of issue that we saw. So I think the SRO's presence only escalated a power struggle between a teacher and a student. And teachers are well versed in how to deal with those power struggles. And one of the primary strategies and things that they are all aware of is never engage in a power struggle with a student in front of their peers. Both the student's going to try to maintain face, and that means not giving in, and whether it's passively or whether it's aggressively. And there are a host of strategies that this teacher could have used. But the ultimate goal, whatever the strategy, the outcome is to establish a relationship with that student so that the issue at hand doesn't recur. And
so are you saying that the teacher in this case failed doing her or his job?
Well, when you start using police officers to manage classroom behavior, you create a police state mentality. And when you do that for every little offense, particularly those of such a minor offense, not putting away a cell phone, you create a mentality amongst the student population that's us against them. So that becomes a pervasive response to any type of disciplinary action, whether in the classroom. And no SRO can maintain that kind of work effort. And teachers, once that culture begins to establish itself, it is a hard way to get back to establishing positive relationships with young people. So my answer is no. The SRO should not have been called. And I understand that an administrator was also present at some point. That's a teacher, and that's a teaching opportunity from the administrator to the teacher. That's the moment of engagement in real time to reinforce the strategies that all good teachers know.
But, okay, and Charles, I'm going to turn to you. You know, I can only hear, I'm channeling my teacher friends who would say, hang on a second, I love my students, I love education, I came into these classrooms to teach. Yes, I will be the disciplinarian up to, you know, a point, but when a student is mouthy and won't, you know, is disrupting the rest of the class and stopping me from doing what I came here to do to educate, I'm going to call in reinforcements. That's not my job.
Well, I think part of the thing that people need to understand, even teachers who have that sort of remark or response to this, is that when you get law enforcement involved, it becomes a criminal situation. And that is, if there's anything that I could take away positively from the sheriff's remarks today in his press conference, is that they were called in, and at the point that the school resource officer gets involved, he's treating it as a criminal situation. He's not worried about classroom discipline. He's not looking at it as a school situation. His mindset is taking down a criminal. Now, I completely disagree with that mindset in terms of how that was executed. Oh, it sends a horrible message to the kids in that classroom. I mean, think about it. You're talking about school safety officers who are in that classroom to ensure the protection of those students. And if you watch that video, what you see on the faces of those children is terror. You see fear. And that's woefully ironic that the person who's charged with protecting them is the person that they fear the most, which is a real problem. So you're right, it's a horrible message. But again, to those teachers who would say, well, I'm having a problem controlling my classroom, that's not why you bring school resource officers into the picture. That's not their purpose, and that's not what they're there for. Such
an important conversation, as there are SROs used all across this country. Charles Coleman, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And Marvin Thompson, I appreciate you there in New Orleans. Coming up next.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.